So we headed out to our training and mentoring. Today, what we want to talk about, we finished up last week. We were talking about prisons and jails and some of my experiences. And we were talking about some of the things that I experienced, some of the people that I met on death row, some infamous killers, if you will. And there was one person in particular, well, a lot of them stood out, but one is very interesting, that turns out to be my relative, cousin, and actually a trustee whom I never met before, did not know, saw my name tag, McBride, and told me, and this is before I was working down the hall on death row, he told me, "Oh, you got a cousin down there, McBride? You got a cousin down there on death row." He was convicted under his alias name, Robert Smith, but his name is actually McBride. You go, you're from New Waverly. You know, he's out of the Houston area, but that's your cousin. I didn't know this inmate from Adam. And I didn't pay too much attention to what he was saying. I figured it could be true. You know, there's a lot of us in that area, McBrides. But I did take note of that name. And I did some research. You know, went home and asked my dad about that name. And he said, well, that's named one of my cousins. That's his son. And I knew the cousin that he named, the father to this inmate that was on death row. So I go, okay, that's legitimate. That is my cousin. No, he's about the inmate that was on death row was about my fifth cousin. And a lot of times people don't know their fifth cousins. But I knew his father, who was my fourth cousin. And when you're in a small town, or from a small town, you know, you generally know a lot of your relatives, no matter how far they're removed from you. I grant you, I have some fifth cousins that I don't know at all and never will know. Loretta Devine, the actress, is my fifth cousin. Her grandma and my grandma were first cousins. I don't know her. Probably never will know her or meet her. But it's a fact. She's my cousin. But back to this Rob Smith, who turned out to be my fifth cousin. So I let the prison officials know that this young man was, I'm calling him young man now, but he's older than me. But I'm looking at him, who he was then and how old I am now. So this young man, I let the prison officials know that this guy is in fact my cousin, who I really don't know. I know his father, but I don't know him. And they had no problem with it. They said, well, do you think he'll be a problem for you? I said, no, I don't know him. Not gonna bother me. So eventually I ended up working down the hall on death row. I did actually meet him. And he does in fact look like his dad. Did in fact look like him. I go, well, okay. Then after that, it was enough for me. Didn't see him again. You know, I eventually left TDCJ and returned to Austin to finish my degree. And this was a couple years later. Of course, I told you he was on death row, right? Mm-hmm. So what he was trying to do was get off death row. And he was claiming mental illness. And in the state of Texas, or in the United States, I believe that, and you can look this up, this is part of y'all class, here's what I'm talking about. You don't execute somebody that's mentally ill, bro. In that case, they were trying to take it to the Supreme Court. So I'll give you some background real quick on what happened, how he ended up there. And a lot of his story, I'll be telling it from his side of the Supreme Court case that they was trying to argue before the Supreme Court. So I can't state that these things are facts other than his claim. So apparently he was at the mall in Houston, one of the Houston malls, and another person whom he did not know was at the mall. And some reason they decide together to rob somebody in the parking lot. Him with somebody whom he does not know decide to rob somebody in the parking lot. Start going. So they robbed this person, but the mall security and the Houston Police Department were in pursuit of them. They gave chase, and they running out of the parking lot, right? And the person whom robbed Smith, this is AKA, and they went in different directions. The person whom he did not know, that he said he did not know, cops never caught him. And he went on, but they gave chase on your cousin. He gave chase. And he runs through a neighborhood. Remember, they only want him for robbery right now while he's running. He gave chase through the neighborhood, and there was a person in that neighborhood in their driveway who had nothing to do with any of this. He was working on his car or truck or something, and he ran and he ended up assaulting that person, and that person died. He killed him. And they eventually caught him. He was tried and given the death penalty, your cousin. But his claim and his appeal was that he was mentally ill, that he's mentally ill and that he should not be executed. And so that case went all the way up, after years, went all the way up to the Supreme Court. It's going to be a landmark decision. Or carry a lot of weight, whatever happens in that case. It'll be McBrides versus State of Texas, I guess. And you can look this up. Or I think it was under his alias, Rob Smith versus the State of Texas. And within the body of the report, it had his real name, McBride. Our name was going to be all over the legal system. In this landmark case. I believe the day before the case was to be argued before the Supreme Court, then Governor of Texas, President Bush, he used to be governor of Texas, commuted Rob Smith's death sentence to life in prison. You got a governor of the state can do that. In the state of Texas, he can grant you a pardon based on the parole board's recommendation, right? Grant you a pardon or commute your sentence to. So the next day, the court did not hear the case. It was a moot point at that time. Like we don't need to hear it now, and that's probably good. They didn't have to make a decision. So.
She used to meet me on the side, see with the sun was. And every day, that everybody do the back, she